Hey folks! Welcome to another exciting episode of Measuring Dev Skills with CodeSignal. Today, it's just going to be me. We're flying solo, but if you think about it, in a lot of ways that's pretty appropriate because what we're really here to look at is the ways that we can use this environment in order to automate the evaluation process of a candidate's technical skills. So that's basically what we're going to do. It's going to be us versus the algorithm, so to speak. Today specifically, we're going to be looking at mongoDB, which is a NoSQL type of database. So the past two episodes, we've been focused on database tasks. We looked at MySQL, we looked at Postgres. Today, we're looking at Mongo. Now, the task we're going to look at is right on the cutting edge today. So if you've been following the platform and all, you probably are aware that CodeSignal is always expanding, always deploying new features to make it easier to automate these kinds of evaluations. So we're going to be looking at one of the freshest ones today, which means that it might not exactly be in its final form, but I think you'll find it's pretty good. So let's go ahead and select our task. As you can see, it's one of my favorites. It's called Retrieve Last Logs. So we'll grab this one, we'll confirm that, and here it is. So we've got it all loaded up. Basically, this is a question where we're given two collections. We normally call these tables within MySQL, but within Mongo we call them collections, I'm pretty sure. So one of them is about toys, the other is toy logs. And the idea is that we basically want to isolate just the animal toys and look at the most recent log that we have for them. So in other words, like the freshest timestamp kind of thing. So we're going to take a look at how to do this, but before we do, just something I wanted to mention. What we're looking at here in the IDE is maybe a little bit different from what we're used to seeing. I mean, normally we'd have probably something like a function here, or maybe a number of files where we're looking at the CSS and stuff like that. This is a bit different. So there's print.js on one line, the DB stuff that we're seeing here. It might seem a little unfamiliar to someone who maybe isn't used to using Mongo. So this is a Mongo environment. It's very similar to JavaScript, but we basically have some nice built-ins that we can use. The two that we're going to be using today are basically this one, print.js on one line, and this one over here, DB. DB is, I think, probably pretty straightforward. It stands for database, and it's basically what's going to allow us to access our collections that we have over here in order to grab the data that we need. Print.js on one line, what we're going to find, in fact, here, let's just try running the following code, like it says in the comment up here. And while we're waiting for this, just for anyone who's unfamiliar, basically what we're looking at here is the CodeSignal environment. So we have our IDE over here. Sometimes we can switch between files, but in this case, it's just the one. We can see that we're using the mongoDB language. If we look on the left side, we get the description, some examples. If we look down here, this is sort of like our console, but we can also use this to sort of see like how the tests are playing out, what we're receiving versus what we want to receive. So all of this stuff is very familiar to anyone who's used the platform before, which is nice because it means even though it's a different type of task maybe from what we're used to, we know where to look, we know where to find the stuff. And I mean, speaking from the perspective of someone who is once a total beginner to the platform, I'd say it's pretty intuitive on its own, even if we haven't seen this before. So we've got the tests down here. What we can see is that we're definitely not returning the right stuff over here. So basically what we're returning right now is just everything that's within the toys collection. We can actually take a look at the setup script over here. This is basically what's determining the tests over here. So basically if we look at our db.toys, so toys is basically like our toys collection. It's the thing that we're printing all the stuff from. And I guess that makes sense, right? Because if we take a look at like the entries over here, ID1, toy type interactive, toy country Belgium, it's matching up with the entries that we have over here. So it's nice that we kind of get it in this much more readable format. Okay, so this isn't quite what we want, right? We don't want to just return this entire database of, or this entire collection of toys. In fact, that's not at all what we want. What we want is more the toy logs, actually. So if we were to just make this slight change, this would already be a little closer to what we're looking for. But not exactly, because we're basically looking for the toy logs that correspond to certain toys from the toys collection, specifically the animal ones. So something you're probably noticing already, I mean, if you're unfamiliar with Mongo, is that it's pretty nice for working with the data. I mean, we get just like a JSON format that's easily interacted with across many languages. It's also a good type of database. They say the big advantage is for large distributed sets of data. So there's some automation that happens in terms of horizontal scaling, which is nice. Generally, I think Mongo is seen as a really good sort of prototyping style of database for when you want to easily expand the data. Let's say you needed to insert like another column, so to speak, although this isn't exactly tabular data. This is just objects, right? So it doesn't all need to look the same. It's a little more flexible, and we're going to see some other ways in which it's flexible in just a minute as well. So specifically in this case, we want to start with the toys that are of type animal. Okay, so we're going to make a query here. Toy type is going to be the string animal. And then from there, this is going to give us like a whole bunch of, well, okay, this is going to give us a cursor essentially. We can do a .map on this, use a cursor method, and we'll just say for the .map, I'm going to expand this because there's going to be a fair bit of stuff in here. So we'll just say for each toy that we're getting over here, we want to do some other stuff with it. For now, let's just return the toy itself, and we'll see what ends up happening just if we do this. So what we should expect is that we're going to get the data from the toys collection, but just the ones that have toy type animal. It's not quite what we're looking to do. Oh, whoops. Okay. Is it because I did that I'm having an issue? I guess we'll find out. Something you're probably noticing is it does take some time to load the tests over here. That's just because, like I said, this is kind of, didn't get any of that time. Okay, so this isn't exactly what we're looking for, but here, maybe we could do something like this, toy.id. Unless I'm doing something totally wrong with this, which is completely possible. But anyway, yeah, basically, I guess we can use this opportunity to talk about what's going on in here. Oh yeah, okay, that's kind of interesting. Not sure why we're not getting the expected result here. Toy type animal, whoops, yeah, that's what it is, animals. Let's try that again. Okay, so as we can see, I mean, a single character can make a huge difference. That's part of the reason why it's so nice to have this little console at the bottom here, so that we're not just totally stuck, right? If we view the setup script here to look at which toys have the type animals, it is the ones that with IDs 2 and 3, so it kind of makes sense that we would get 2 and 3 in our array here. And what we are actually expecting is an array that contains, well, it is an array anyway, but what it contains are things that are not exactly just the ID here, but the actual log that we get corresponding to that ID. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do another find. And by the way, that tends to be one of the slower things in a Mongo database, doing the .find, whereas like inserting data is generally a lot faster. The queries can be a little bit slower, but there are some optimizations that we're going to look at in just a minute. So specifically what we want to find are the entries from toy logs that have toy ID equal to whatever the toy, like the current toy's ID is. So this is the same thing that we were just using when we were just displaying the ID. So let's run that. We'll see what's happening over here. And yeah, we'll see if this is close to what we're looking for the answer here. Now keep in mind, we're looking for the most recent one. Oh yeah, okay. So this is a good example of what happens when we don't do like a .map, or actually just to simplify it, I'm going to use a to array. Okay, so we're going to take all this stuff from the cursor over here. The cursor being something that we can normally do like a .hasNext or like .next to sort of iterate through it. So that's another way we could do this problem. But in this case, yeah, we're going to convert it to an array. So we're seeing that it's not exactly what we're looking for. There are two main things. We don't want the ID in here. That's going to be the easier thing to deal with. The other thing that's going to be a little tougher is we only want the most recent one of these, right? We don't want like all of the ones that match up with that ID. We just want the one with the most recent timestamp. So that'll be probably maybe the tougher part to handle. And I say that because the other part, getting rid of the ID here, is rather straightforward. Basically, we just have to say we don't want the ID as part of our query over here. So we're giving it like a second set of options saying ID, no, that's not really something we're interested in. Give it a 0, indicating that we do not want that part of it. What we're going to do from here is basically just arrange the entries in such a way that we can just take like we can put them in descending order of timestamp and then just take the 0 with 1, and that's going to be the most recent log. So already it's looking like the data is closer to what we're expecting over here. So now we want to actually just get the most recent one there. Okay, so the way we'll do that is we'll do a dot sort before we do the toArray, and we'll also do a dot limit. And we've got so much stuff here that I think I'm going to start to put these on separate lines over here. So dot find, dot sort, dot limit, dot toArray. We'll just indent these. Yeah, maybe a space. Perfect. Okay, so for the dot sort, we want to sort this according to timestamp, and we want it in descending order so that we can just grab the 0 with 1, which we'll do now, and we're going to limit it to 1 so that, well, for a reason that we're about to find out, I guess. But the main thing is that we want this to be a -1 so that we get the most recent one. If this was like a +1, then it'd put them in ascending order, in which case we'd get the least recent one, the oldest one. Ooh, look at this, green check marks. That's always a nice thing to see. So it looks like we're getting the right stuff here. You might look at this and think like, well, why bother with this limit thing? Like you could get rid of that, right? And still run. So that's a really good point. This is basically something, I think it's related to lazy evaluation, which you might be familiar with from like the Haskell language or something like that. But basically the idea is that instead of just going through this and saying, okay, database, all right, database.toilet, got it, okay. And then dot find, okay, I'll do the dot find. And then after that, do the dot sort, then after that, the limit. Instead, it's kind of looking at the big picture and saying, well, I see a sort and then I see a limit as well. It's not gonna go ahead and like sort every one of these entries, which, as you know, could be bad, it could be costly, n log n, right? If it was like a large collection of things. It's not going to do that whole sort and then just take the top one. It's going to say, oh, well, we're limiting it to 1. So we're just going to look at the top one as we go through this. Okay, so this is the sort of thing that like, it doesn't really make a difference in terms of the result, but it could make a difference in terms of the performance. Speaking of performance, like we talked about before, when we run these tests, and I guess we might as well just see what happens if we switch this to a +1, just for curiosity's sake. But the reason it kind of takes a longer time is because, as we talked about last time, when we run the tests, it's actually, there's a Docker image that's set up to run these kinds of things. It's setting up a Docker container. This is on the Code Runner's server, so it's a dedicated server to run these kinds of things. So we hit run test, it's sending off the tests with some metadata as well as like our code over here. It sets up the image according to this setup script that we see right here. Now just to make sure that Mongo is all set up properly, right now we just have a sleep in here of 1 second, which is why it sort of takes a longer time. But like I said, I mean, you can expect constant improvements from the CodeSignal platform, so maybe in the future we can check back and see how we've progressed. As you can see, I'm actually failing all of the tests right now because of this ordering. The nice thing about these kind of tests in terms of like the automated evaluation is that we could maybe throw in a few where it wouldn't make a difference if we ordered them in the wrong order, like if we made it ascending instead of descending. And that way we could use that as a way to sort of zoom in on that one particular skill so that we get some meaningful feedback from the number and the like specific tests that the candidate ended up passing. So all that to say, it's not just like a pass-fail kind of thing. Whoops. What have we done? Oh, yeah, it was supposed to have the negative one. Did I just delete that? Oh, geez. Anyway, all that to say, it's not just a pass-fail kind of thing. We get detailed information about where the candidate's strengths lie. So in this case, we're passing all the tests, and that's a nice thing to see. All right, so I think that's it in terms of what we wanted to say for this task. If anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns, I guess you can leave them in the comments. But as for now, I think we're going to wrap up there. I think you can join us again next week where we'll look at another one of these tasks. Not sure exactly what type yet, but hey, stay tuned and find out. All right. See you later, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.